Alright guys, welcome back to the course. So in this video I'm going to show you how to try out FL Studio for free if you're not decided on if you want to purchase FL Studio or not, or if you just want to try out the product with this course and try to learn FL Studio. You can do it all for free. So first let's navigate to image-line.com and you will come to this website. You can see FL Studio 20 is the version of now. And you can see this button here, download trial. So let's click that. And here you can see you can choose between Windows version and a Mac OS version. So FL Studio always had a Windows version available and didn't support Mac OS until recently. So it's very nice that both Windows users and Mac OS users can use FL Studio now. So depending on what version you have, you just click on it. You will download an installer. You can see our full installer and trial installer. So what you basically do is to download the installer, click that you want to try the product out. When you do that, you can do everything, but there are some trial limitations here. So as you can see, you can save FL Studio projects, so you can do that. But reopening saved project is not possible. Some functions that use save load capability don't work in the trial. For example, clone channels and the save preset as menu options. You can export to WAV and MP3 files, so basically you can create a project, you can create a full track, and then you can export it to WAV and MP3. Then you can see the trial is equivalent to FL Studio plus all plugin bundle, so you can test all features and plugins. So in the next video you will see a comparison between the different FL Studio versions that are available, and you just choose whatever version you want to have. But as you can see, this trial here is basically the biggest version you can have. So let's say that you're using FL Studio with the trial version here, and you see that you're always going to one or two or several plugins, and you feel that you really want these plugins. Then you can decide on what version you want to purchase. So it's really nice that ImageLine has that you can try it out with the all plugin bundle. You can see here free trial, test all features and extra plugins, time unlimited, no registration or account needed, one installer for trial and full versions. So it's very nice. As well, you can just purchase it and you can unlock the trial as well. So as soon as you unlock the trial, you can use the full version there as well. So you don't have to let's say install the program and then uninstall it, then reinstall it, re-download and stuff like that. You just basically get an access code and then unlock FL Studio with the trial that you have installed. You can do almost everything with the trial version here, but you can't save an FL Studio project and then open it. That is the big limitation that they have with the trial. So let's say that you're working with a project and you save it, then you can't open it up again. You have to start all over again. So it's not really that good to just stay on the trial all the time. It may work if you're working really quick and want to just get out some tracks with one sitting in one session. You can do that, of course, but let's say that your computer crashes or something, then you can't open it up as well. So I really recommend you to just start out with a trial here. Just download, try it out, and just keep watching the course. We're going to create a track, a full track later on in the course, so just hop into the course. So as I said before, you don't have to pay for the FL Studio to watch this course. You can get this trial and watch the course with the trial version. Alright guys, so that is it for this video. Let's see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, let's take a look at imageline.com, which is FL Studio's website. And ImageLine is the manufacturer of the FL Studio program. So as you can see on their introductory webpage here, you will see a brief description of FL Studio, as seen here. And you can also download the trial version. So let's say that you're not really sure if you're going to have FL Studio as your digital audio workstation, or if you want to just try it out with this course. I will strongly suggest you to download the trial first before buying. It is going to work as the full version, but you can't really save projects with the trial version, so that is the only thing you can do. But if you're taking this course and you're not owning FL Studio as of now, then you can just download the trial and follow along this course, and that will work really good. So you can also buy FL Studio, as you can see here. So if we click here, we'll go straight to the shop here, and as you can see, there are different versions of FL Studio. So you have the first Fruity edition, as they call it, and as you can see, the supported operating system is Windows and Mac, as I explained before. And then we have the Fruity edition, first one, which is 89 euros. And then we have the Producer edition, which is 189 euros. Signature bundle, so 100 euros more. And then you have the FL Studio All plugins, which is significantly pricier, as you can see there. So this is the main reason for this one and why it's priced a lot higher than the previous version here, is because this version contains all of the plugins that ImageLine has, and some of their plugins are really powerful. So yeah, I mean, if you got the money and if you're really investing into your music production, I would say go for this version, because you will have basically everything you need to have. There are, of course, some different third-party plugins that you maybe want to own, because some of the third-party plugins that you can find out there has a nice sound to it that you want to have, or let's say that you found a plugin with a really nice sample, let's say real instruments. Yeah, then you can go with the Fruit edition and then just purchase the plugins, for instance. So the main differences between these versions here is, let's see here, in this little box here, you can see that the Fruit editions is no audio clips, no audio recording, limited playlist features. So I would not recommend the Fruit edition, because you can't even do audio clips. So let's say that you have a beat, or let's say that you have some audio samples, which is very commonly used nowadays, that you create your music with existing audio loops or audio files, then I wouldn't really go with this Fruit edition at all. The Producer edition is, in my opinion, the best bang for the buck, because you will get audio recording and full playlist features, plus 8 extra plugins as listed. And yeah, so you won't have the VST plugin versions, but you will still get the plugins that comes with FL Studio. So what this means is that you can't really use all of these plugins that comes with FL Studio, the 8 extra plugins. You can't really use them with other digital audio workstations. But if you're going to stick with FL Studio, there's no sense to go with the VST plugins anyway. So you can also always add extra plugins and instruments. So let's say that you have a plugin that you really like, or let's say that you watch this course and you see that, wow, this plugin, I really need to have it, but I don't want to own all of the plugins that comes with this price. Then you can just choose one by one like this. You can also download samples like that. So you have all of the different sample packs that ImageLine creates, like this. You can read all about them, and yeah, that is all they have on the ImageLine site. You also have the Signature bundle. So what this is basically just more plugins. If you want to compare these different versions between them, you can go to another section. I just want to point out here that this is in euro. You can also go with the USD, US dollars, and yeah, this is the prices for that one as of now when I record this course. So if you go to here, you can go to additions, and here we can see all of the differences between these Fruity, Producer, Signature, and All Plugins bundle. So as I said before, this producer version is the best if you want to produce music and you're creating most of your tracks in the box, so meaning that you don't have any other external instruments like that, then I will go for this version. But you can still do all your recording with this, so you can still use different external instruments with this as well. And you can read all of the differences between them, as you can see here. So I strongly recommend you to go through this and see what type of version you will need. So yeah, and just choose the version that you find is suitable for you. Alright guys, so let's see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, welcome to this first video in the FL Studio 20 course. So in this video, I just want to let you know that FL Studio has been doing some different changes between the versions. So version 11 or 12, for instance, they differ between them. So even though you're very familiar with, let's say you've been creating music with FL Studio version 11, and now you're taking this course for version 20, I will still think that this course is good for you. So even though you've been using FL Studio a long time, but not this version 20, I still think you should take this course. I'm gonna go through all the new stuff as well as a brief introduction to FL Studio. So if you've never been using FL Studio, or let's say that this is the first time you're producing music at all, I think this course will fit you as well. This course is suited for all the people that has never been creating music with FL Studio, but as I said, I still think that you should take this course if you have been using the previous versions of FL Studio prior to version 20. And as you can see, my version of FL Studio may look a bit different than yours. You can see here at the close, minimize, and maximize buttons here, and this is because I use FL Studio on Mac, but they are exactly the same on Windows operating systems as well as Mac operating systems. So if you're using Windows 10 or Windows 7 or Mac OS, for instance, it will be exactly the same, and it looks the same as well. So let's see you in the next lecture, where we're going to cover the basics of FL Studio. Let's see you there. Alright guys, let's take a look at the interface of FL Studio. So as you can see, first we have the close, minimize, and maximize buttons on the left hand side here, instead of the usual case when in Windows is that these three buttons here are on the right side. But yeah, I'm using Mac for FL Studio for this course, but it's the same thing for Windows or for Mac. So all of these buttons will be on the left hand side. And if you're using Mac OS, your buttons for close, minimize, and maximize are always on the left hand side anyway. So this change is only going to affect Windows users. Different buttons on this side that you will open and close all of the time when you're working in FL Studio. So let's take a look at them. I will close this playlist window right now, so just close it like that. This is the mixer, I'm gonna close it as well. So here you can see, first button is the playlist. So you open and close it by just clicking the playlist button here. Next one we have is the piano roll. Next one we have is the channel rack, which is this one. Then we have the mixer. And then we have the browser and plugin picker. Alright guys, welcome to this lecture when we're going to take a look at the interface of FL Studio. So this is how it usually looks when you load up FL Studio for the first time. And as you can see, there are a lot of different buttons here. There are a lot of things going on here already when you start FL Studio for the first time. So as you can see here, I have the close, minimize and maximize buttons, and these are the only buttons that differs between the Windows version and the Mac version. Other than that, we have the menus, file, edit, add, patterns, view, options, tools and help. So we will cover these menus in a later lecture. For instance, you have all of the regular open and save, import, export. The edit is just cut, copy. Then you have add, and this is all of the plugins that you can add into your projects. And yeah, so you have different plugins here, but also effects. And we will cover all of these plugins in a separate lecture later on. Patterns, we will also do a separate lecture about that. Then we have the view, options. So there are a lot of different options in FL Studio, but we will cover that as well. Then we have the tools. There are different tools in FL Studio, and we have the help section as well. And in this course, we will not cover FL Studio in depth because we want to learn FL Studio in a day basically. So I will cover all of the basics in FL Studio and everything that you need to know to produce music. So you have a lot of different options in FL Studio, since FL Studio is a massive program to create music and audio editing, MIDI editing, and other music production related tasks that you can do in FL Studio. But in this course, we will cover everything you need to know to produce music. All of the different artists and producers out there that uses FL Studio, they know this that I'm going to teach you in this course. And we're also going to have a separate course, which is going to be a lot longer than this one, and we will cover everything in depth. But I think it's very important to learn your digital audio workstation very fast, so you can get starting to use your digital audio workstation and produce music as quick as you can. Yeah, so instead of just watching a course that is, let's say, 20 hours long or something like that, where we learn that you're not really going to use at all in the future. Instead of that, we're focusing on what you need to know and also how to start to create music, because this course is all about that. Okay, so next thing that we have here, typing keyboard to piano keyboard. So if you have this enabled, then you can play your keyboard, like your physical keyboard on your computer, with the MIDI keyboard. So as soon as I play something, or as soon as I type something on my keyboard here, then we will have some sound outputs here. I'm just pressing my keyboard, physical keyboard on my laptop here. So if I disable this, I can't really play with the MIDI in FL Studio at all. Yeah, but when I have this enabled, I just play it like that. Next thing that we have here, scrolls to reach time markers. We go back here to the left. This section here is our transport section. So here we can basically go to, let's see here, song position. So if you want to get forward or backward in your track, because we don't have anything here in the track right now, so you can't really scroll through the track right now, but this is the way to go when you have a lot of different clips inside of the arrangement here. Then you can just scroll around it with this here. Then we have next one here, pattern or song or pattern mode. So if this is enabled, then you will play the whole song. If you have this enabled, that will only play the selected pattern. We will cover this as well. You will see that in the production section. So you will see how this is going to work live later on. Then you have the play, and then you have the stop here, record, and this is the tempo. So you can just select the tempo by dragging like this. You can also do it more finely like that as well. If you go to this section with the 3 zeros here. Now let's take a look at all of these buttons here. So the first one is the view playlist. So this is the playlist which is going to have an arrangement in. Then, yeah, and you can also enable or disable it by just clicking and clicking it again. Then you have next one, piano roll. So you enable and disable the piano roll here. Then you have the channel rack. Just enable and disable it. Mixer, like that. Browser and plugin picker. So you have all of your sounds and plugins here. Then we have something called Open Project Plugin Picker. Then we have Tempo Tapper. And then you have Touch Controller. So the 2 last buttons here, I'm just going to cover this really quickly because I won't cover this later on in this course. But a tempo tapper is basically when you want to find a tempo, and you just tap this here, and this will detect the tempo of your tapping basically. And I'm used to produce with a tempo around 128 BPM, so it may be why this tempo is here. Then we have next one, touch control and touch controller here. Then we have the next one here, touch controller. This is like a MIDI keyboard, but with these touchpads here instead. You can also see the tonality of all of these touchpads here as well. And here is launch content library. So if I click on it here, that will load up a browser with Image Line's website, where we can find their own content library that we can download. Then you have online content and events, so you can find different news about FL Studio here. Then we have next section, so patterns. You can load up different patterns that you're going to create. So the patterns are basically just like clips that you can just browse out like that. And here we have the pattern selector, so you can select the different patterns that you're working with. And with patterns, if I click something on the arrangement here, let's say that I want some MIDI data from 5 here, let's say. I just click it like that, I can resize it, and I can delete it by just right click my mouse. So I left click to create it and right click to delete it, and that is basically how you do everything in FL Studio. So if you're creating the MIDI data in piano roll, for instance, you click the left to create a MIDI, let's say a MIDI section or a MIDI data, and then you right click to just get rid of it. So let's say that this is just the first pattern. So as you can see, if I click here and there, or let's say that I click as much as I want, all of this is going to be linked to pattern 1. So pattern 1, let's get rid of all of these here. Pattern 1 is just because we have selected pattern 1 in the pattern selector. So what patterns is that they contain some MIDI data, or sometimes even audio as well. So let's say that we have a pattern 1 here, and we have that selected here. I can go to the piano roll. Now I can write out something. Let's say I have it like that. So now we have the pattern 1 here. So as soon as I click somewhere, I get the same pattern because we have the pattern 1 selected. But let's say that we want to create some other kind of let's say kick rhythm here, because I have it created like the pattern 1 here. So if I just go to pattern 2, so I go up or press just plus, I can also create the name there, or I can go here and I can find next empty, for instance, so like that. So now that is the pattern 3. So now I can go to the piano roll, I can write out something else. Let's say I want that kind of pattern for the pattern 3. So now if I click here, you will have the pattern 3. with the same data that we created in the pattern 3 that we're going to discuss later on when we're creating our track. Maybe it doesn't make sense for you right now, and that is totally fine. Maybe you're just out there thinking, what is this guy talking about? And I will tell you everything you need to know about patterns when we're creating music, because that is going to be the easiest way to explain how these patterns work. It's good to know for you that you have this pattern system introduced. You have these buttons here, as you can see: undo, open new audio editor, like that. One-click audio recording, you can get more help. You can save as new version, so save as. Then you have render as audio file, and then you have view project info. I see all of these buttons here as shortcuts, and I don't think you will use them that often. I don't do that. So yeah, but it's good to know that they are there, and if you want to, let's say, render as an audio file, and then you have that shortcut here. So that is actually really nice to have. Then we have the song position. So you can see the song position, or you can see minutes, seconds, like that. And then you have bars like this. Then we have the monitor, so you can see all of the audio that is outputted. You can also click on it to get different wave spectrum. And you have the peak meter here as well. Then we have the CPU load, so you can see how much your computer is actually working when you're creating or working with your project. Then you have the memory usage, so this will show all of the RAM or RAM memory that FL Studio is using right now. CPU load history, so you can actually see where or when the spikes of the CPU or the processor in your computer is happening. Then you have the amount of voices being processed there as well, and CPU panel. And then we have some more buttons here. So typing keyboard to piano keyboard that I explained before. You have scrolls to reach time markers, step editing mode, enable notes. You have multi-link to controllers, so you can actually control different stuff that is happening to a MIDI controller. You have the metronome, wait for input to start playing, countdown before recording, blend recording, and loop recording. So all of these functions here are pretty self-explanatory, but I will still use some of them in this course, and I will use the functions that I think are really the most necessary to feel comfortable using when you're creating music. That is a brief overview of the interface in FL Studio. Let's see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, so let's take a more in-depth look at the interface in FL Studio. So the most important things that you need to know and that you're actually going to use day by day is to switch between the pattern and the song, so you can do it like that. And I will explain in a moment what this does, the song and pattern mode. You can also change the tempo here, as I showed before. You can also right click and choose different tempos, or you can go to set here and you can just choose the tempo like that by increasing and decreasing like that if you want to. You can also go to type in value here and just type in the value that you want like that. And as you can see on all of the things I hover here, you can see this little window here or this little section here in FL Studio where everything is explained. So as you can see, it tells you that this is the typing keyboard to piano keyboard, for instance, and this is scrolls to reach time markers, for instance, and so on and so forth. So you can also see the different key commands for that, for the function that I'm hovering over here. You can see command B there, for instance. And here we have all of the recording and editing buttons here. And here are all of the Windows buttons. And there's the pattern selector as well. You can also rename the pattern here. So let's say that we want to rename it as test. And you can also drag up and down here to select the different patterns. So as soon as I do that, you can see that it's adding a pattern to the playlist. It may not make any sense to you right now what these patterns does and why it shows up in the playlist, but I will explain that more in depth in a while. I will also create a full track in this course, so you will see how I use the playlist and use the different patterns as well. So I think that will make a lot more sense to you when you're watching me create that track live. The way it works with FL Studio when you're creating songs is that you're creating patterns, and then you're taking these patterns or clips and just arrange them in the playlist, so that way you arrange the track. So let's close all of these windows here, like that. So as you can see here, first section we have in FL Studio is the browser section. And here you can see all of the different samples and different files you have on your computer, as well as the different plugins that comes with FL Studio, as well as different plugins that you have as audio units on Mac or VST on PC. And this is the third-party plugins, such as Native Instruments plugins or other plugins that you may have on your computer. Channel rack here, and here are all of the different samples that are stored in this project, basically. So creating patterns within this channel rack. And after that, when you're creating the pattern, you can insert that pattern to the playlist. So the channel rack contains all of the samples that you have in the project. And here is also where you create the patterns that you will have in the playlist here to create the track. Easily explained, you create your patterns within the channel rack, then you drag the channel rack into the playlist. You can have as many patterns as you want in the playlist. Then you will chop them up, you can copy, paste them over, you can loop them, you can arrange them wherever you want. So you're basically painting out the patterns here in the arrangement or in the playlist here. So that is how you create the track. Mixer section here. So here is the mixer, all of the different channel tracks here that goes out to the master, as you can see. And I will explain a lot more within the mixer, what it does and how you work with it in a separate video, so just so you know that. And I'm going to have all of the different sections here, all of the channel rack, the playlist, the mixer section, the browser, as well as separate videos, just so you will know what they do. It's good to know exactly in depth what they do before working with it. I still don't believe in like explaining a very much in theory behind the different sections. I mean, all of these different sections are basically the different elements that you need to have to create your track. It's just that it works different in FL Studio comparing to other digital audio workstations. So you need to know how to do that in FL Studio, and I will show that by creating a full track. I think you will learn FL Studio the most when watching me creating the full track. So let's close all of these windows here, going like that. All right, so now we have everything closed. So I will explain you exactly how the signal flows through here in FL Studio. So first you have the browser, and you can see all of the different files, browser, and all of the different files that we have, the plugins as well. As you can see here, this is the current project, so you can also search for different patterns, effects, generators, and the history, what you have done in the current project here as well. You can also see the plugin database, so you will just get the plugins here, so you can find all of the FL Studio's built-in effects and generators here, as well as the installed effects or generators. So let's say that I have some different VST plugins here, third-party plugins, so you can see all of them here as well. And you just double-click on the plugin to load it up as well. So if you go to the browser here and you go to all, so you can see the same thing here as well as here. You can also create a new snap, so you can create your own view of the different things that you want to have in the browser. But if you go back to all, you can also search for different samples that we have here in the browser as well. If you want your own folder here, as you can see, there are different preset folders here. You can add them in. So let's say that I have a sample pack folder on my hard drive. You can add that to the browser here as well. So you do that by go into options and file settings. And here you can see browser extra search folders. So here I can just press the folder and just find let's say a sample pack. All right, so I want that sample pack, or let's say that I want the full sample pack folder. So I'm opening up like that. I can also choose a folder inside of the folder. So let's say that I want Deep House Top Loops folder here as well. So now I can also choose a browser name here if I want to call it something else than the folder. But let's have it like that. And now you can see this is the, you can expand them like this, like that. So that is very nice to use, and the browser in FL Studio is amazing. It's very fast, it's very quick, it syncs with the tempo if you're working with loops and other stuff like that, so that is very nice. The way the signal flow works in FL Studio is that you choose your samples here in the browser. So let's say that I want to use this sample here. So I just click, just right click and open a new channel, and that will load up this interface here. And this is basically the sampler in FL Studio. You can see the sample, you can browse it like that, you can also drag it like that, you can reverse the sample, normalize. I have a lot of different things you can do here. You can also ADSNR, so you can choose your attack time, you can choose release time of the sample, and a lot more. Pitch range is very nice to have here as well. You can also automate all of these things here, so you can choose the pitch range to go to, let's say, to 12, which is an octave, and then you can automate the pitch, let's say from here to here, and you will have 2 octaves that you can pitch up, for instance, so you can create a riser by that. So you can be very creative with these things that FL Studio has. You can also choose the root nodes. So here you have the root node set to C5, but you can click, let's say right click here, and you can also choose the zone here. So you can choose how many keys you want the sound to be affecting. So I can now only play from C3 to, let's say, B7 here, as I chose. You can fine tune the different root nodes as well. So yeah, you can do that as well, but this is a drum loop, so I'll just leave it like it is. And now as soon as I created a new channel, I'll go to the channel rack here, and you see we have that sample. I just imported twice, so I can delete one of those. Okay, so now we have this drum loop here in the channel rack. So what we can do here is to place the samples here, but since this is a drum loop, I don't want to do that. It goes from the channel rack, goes to the playlist here, then to the mixer, out to the master channel, and that is what you hear through your speakers. So let's go back and create a pattern. So I'm going to close these windows here. Let's see, let's do it like that. And the channel rack and that one as well. Let's go to the channel rack, and I also want the playlist to be like this. So as you can see, as soon as I put the playlist, the channel rack disappears in the background, so I have to click to get back to it, and as soon as I work something in the playlist, it disappears. So what we can do by that is to go to this drop down menu in the channel rack and just choose detached like this, and now it will stay here, so I don't have to worry about this disappearing all the time. Otherwise you can just click here to make it disappear and to make it go back. Alright, so let's import a sound that we want to have in our project. So every time we load up FL Studio with a new project, you will always get the kick, clap, hat and snare loaded up as per default. So what we can do here is to go to packs, let's say. Here we have different sounds that comes with FL Studio, and I want some drums. So let's say I want a kick drum here. I can click to preview them like that. So let's say that we want 808 kick, and just take from here and drag it onto this space here. That will create a new channel for us with this sample loaded up. Different instruments, so let's say we want an instrument here. I want a guitar, let's say a classical acoustic guitar, and I can just choose one of these and just drag them in like that as well. So if I click on one of these instruments here, or these samples that we have in this project, we get this little window that I talked about previously. And this is the wrapper, as they call it in FL Studio. I can preview the sound by clicking here, as you can hear. And yeah, as I showed before, we can do different stuff, ADSNR and stuff. So that is very nice to have. And you just click on the sound to get the respective wrapper of that sound. More stuff in the channel rack. So as you can see, I have these little dial buttons that you can choose the pan here for all of the different instruments that we have, and the volume here as well. And if we open up the wrapper, you can see that if I choose the volume here, it's linked to the wrapper here as well, like that. Then we have this little dialog box here that is the number for the mixer track that we want to have. So if we open up the mixer, you will see all of these channels that we have in the mixer. So let's say that I want the kick drum to be assigned to channel 10. Then you go and do it like that, and you will also see that this selected instrument here is actually linked or selected here in the mixer as well. You can browse through them like that. You can also go and right click here and choose copy value. You can also do that as well in a lot of different things in FL Studio, that instead of just browsing through like that, you can just right click it, and then we will always go and get this little menu here as well. And they are very handy. You can link to controller to automate stuff, but just for the basic stuff right now, you can copy and paste values, for instance. So let's say that we want to copy this value here and we want the same value in this one. You can just paste the value and you will get exactly the same thing. You can do that with knobs. Let's say you can do that with copy value here, and you can paste the value here, for instance. So that is very handy to have there. And yeah, as I said before, you can browse around them like that. You can also type in values. So let's say we want them to be assigned to mixer track 20. Let's just do it like that as well. All right, so let's create an actual pattern here. So I'm going to close these windows here, and as you can see, I'm on pattern 3 here because we did a test pattern before. But let's go to the plus sign here, and we have the pattern 2 name. So let's create our first track. I'm going to do a kick drum here. I'm going to choose a color, so let's choose that color for now, and just confirm that. And yeah, we have the kick here, and I'm going to change the color of this kick drum as well to the same color, or kind of the same, just so I know that the kick drum in the channel rack is linked to the kick drum in the playlist. Or program the kick pattern in the step sequencer here. So let's do that. You can just click or left click the notes that you want to have in the channel rack. You can also delete them by just right clicking on them like that. You can also drag all of these like that. You can drag it with the right click to get rid of them. So let's program a basic 1/4 kick drum pattern here, and let's just play it. And there is our pattern. So now we have a pattern here, and you can drag it out to the playlist like that, and you can listen to the arrangement with this pattern here. So that is how you create a pattern in FL Studio. It's very easy to do that. Play this pattern here and just go to the mixer. You will see that since we chose this kick drum sample to be linked to the channel track 20 here in the mixer, you will see that the audio output will come out through the mixer track number 20. And now I think you will see the difference between the pattern and the song selection that we had here in the transport control. You can see the song, then we're just going to play what's in the song or what's in the playlist or our arrangement. That's the same thing here. So let's say that we have this kick here. We can actually just go like that. We can create some more here. And now if we play the song, then you will play all of these things that you have here in the playlist. So that is our patterns times 3 basically. So So if you go to play here, you will see that we will play all of these patterns in the playlist. But if you go to the pattern mode here, then you will see that the selected pattern here will be played. Actually select the patterns here. So if you go to test here, we don't have anything there, so it would not play anything, and the kick. And you can also browse through the different patterns here. You can also create new one, as I showed before, and you can see different settings for this basically. So you can rename a color, you can select in the playlist, you can clone one, that is a very nice one to have. You can also delete and move it up and down, but I think this view is better to do that for. Another option in this channel rack here with the step sequencer, you can also open up something called graph editor, which will generate a few different options for the selected notes that you have here. So for instance, you can pitch the notes here. You can also put some different velocity. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. You can also pan the different individual sounds here as well. And you can just play around with this. There's a lot of different things you can do here. Let's take a look at the playlist here. So let's close the channel rack. And the playlist is where we going to arrange our tracks. So I'm going to take all of these pattern clips here and just move them like that. And as you can see, you add a new pattern by just left click, and you delete it with the right click. You also have a lot of different tools here. So as you can see, we're now at the paint tool, but you can also choose draw tool, which will allow us to just put one and then move it. You can't paint it like with the paint tool, like this. Then we have some different tools, so delete, you just click it and delete it. But that is, I mean, when you're using the paint or draw mode, that will actually be built in by just right clicking on the pattern. Then you have mute, so you can mute an individual pattern like that, and you can also enable the sound like that. See, you can put all of these patterns here in whatever track you want, so you can actually do it like this if you want to, but just to stay organized and let's delete all of these, to have one individual sound per track, it's very nice to just rename, color, and icon the track itself. So let's do that. I'm going to go with kick, put a similar color there as well, and just make it like that. Alright guys, welcome back to the course. So just to recap some things here, we're going to recreate this project. So let's quickly create a kick drum here, quick drum pattern, or instead of just drawing that out, we can just right click here, fill each 4 steps, and now we have a kick pattern. Cool. So what we're gonna do here is to rename this pattern here, rename and color, kick, and let's color it red. So now we have the kick drum. So let's create a new pattern here, and we're gonna call this clap and snare. Oh yeah, we can also color it as well. And by the way, if you don't like know the color that you want for each instrument, you can just right click here, this pattern, random color. That's it, you can do it that way. So now we have a new pattern here, and I'm going to create a clap like that and a snare like that. Very nice. So let's go back to the kick drum here to just select it and have it on the playlist, and select this pattern, the clap and snare, and have it there as well. So I'm going to rename the playlist arrangement here as well. Like that. And let's go with change color. Yeah, and we want the same color basically, just so we're not confused. So this is that color, and we have a red there as well. Great. We can also change the icon here. So let's say we have a kick drum. That is a kick drum. Claps and snares. So let's do that, for instance. Very nice. So now we can play the song. And there is our song for now. Let's create a new pattern. So pattern 3, and we're going to call this hats. Let's go with the color here as well. Something yellow would be good. And I want to fill each 2 steps. And now we have a hat here as well. So let's play the pattern. Very nice. So we have the hats here, and let's rename color and icon this as well to hats. And we want the same kind of yellow there as well. And now just place the hats pattern there. So now if we choose the song mode, we have a full drum beat now. So that's very nice. What we can do here is to group these tracks, these 3 tracks here, to one track. So what you will do here is to right click on the track that you want to group with. So let's say I want to group these 2 tracks with this first track here. I just go to the track that I want to group with above track like that, and do the same thing as well here on the hats track. So now you can see the kick, claps and snare and hats track are grouped together. So you can expand and do like that for this whole group here. So it's very nice, you can just do it like that, and you can minimize things and organize things this way. To group a lot of tracks here, you can just right click on each track, press the letter G like that, and now you can group a lot of different tracks here. It's very handy to have here when organizing stuff in your project, is to just go with auto color group. That will color all of these tracks that you have grouped together. So now it's a lot more organized. You can see the red little background here on all of the clips here that you're going to use in the arrangement in the playlist here. We're working with a channel rack here, and we're working with a step sequencer. What you can do here is to open up the piano roll, and that will give you a lot more flexibility when creating notes. So you can just choose whatever instrument you want here. Let's say we have the kick, clap and hat and snare. You can just right click on one of them and choose piano roll, and that will take you to the piano roll of the instrument that you clicked. So you can also see that piano roll and the kick. So if I open up clap here, for instance, that's going to open up the piano roll for the clap. And here I can create notes, a lot more precise notes. So like we have now, for instance, in the pattern of the claps and snares here. So let's go to that pattern like that. And now let's go to the piano roll. And now we can see the notes that we created here. So it's basically the same thing as the step sequencer, but you have a lot more flexibility within a piano roll. So what you can do here, you can, let's say we want to resize that note, for instance. You can create new notes. You can pitch notes. You can also delete them by just right-clicking the mouse like that. And you also have the control here. So here you can control different velocities, release. Yeah, you have a lot of different things you can control here. So you're actually controlling the note that you're writing out in the piano roll. So if I want to, like, let's say I want a lower velocity on one of the notes, let's say this note here, I can just lower the velocity like that. Let's take a more in-depth look of the piano roll. So to create a new instrument here, you can just go with the plus sign here, or you can also go to add, and here you have all of the plugins. But let's just go with the plus sign here for now, and I'm gonna go with Fruity or FL Keys. And this is a very basic piano plugin that comes with FL Studio. I'm just playing that on my keyboard here. And as you can see, if let's just create a new pattern here and just call it piano. Let's color it as well. Great. So now if I just go with this step sequencer here, it will only play the middle C of this note. So let's play that. and I can't really do anything here. So let's get rid of that and open up the piano roll like that. So now we have the piano roll here. You can also make it full size like that just by double clicking the title bar here. So now if I want to create a, let's say a chord here, I can just draw out a chord. Let's do that. In FL Studio is one of the best piano rolls I think out there on all of the digital audio workstations out there. For instance, I've been using Logic a lot and Ableton Live a lot, but FL Studio is by far the best piano roll when it comes to flexibility and how to work with different notes. There are a lot of different tools you can use here. I'm not going to go through exactly all of the tools because that would make the course like a year long or something like that. So I want you to explore a lot of these different functions by yourself. I'm going to use a lot of functions when I create the tracks, so you will see how I use them. Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, I'm going to talk a little bit about the channel rack in FL Studio. So the channel rack contains all of our channels in our project. So what I mean by channels is basically audio samples, VST plugins, effects, or automations. Different sounds and instruments to the channel rack. It's very easy to do that. You can do it in the browser, so if you just browse for some, let's say, sounds, you can just drag it in like that. You can also choose your own samples and just drag them in like that to the channel rack. You can also press the little plus sign here to add a plugin. So all of these are FL Studio built-in plugins. We can also go to more plugins here to open up your third-party VST and audio unit plugins. Also delete one of the tracks here by just going to the track and press delete. If you want to modify the sound itself that the track contains, you just left click on the sound and you get this wrapper here, as they call it in FL Studio. And here you can modify a lot of different settings within the instrument or within the sound. So the wrapper is basically a sampler for audio files. So if you have an audio file imported to the channel rack and left click on it, then you will have the wrapper here. So the wrapper is basically, like I said, a sampler. If you have a VST plugin, for instance, you just left click on it and that will open up the VST plugin. Resize the channel rack so you can add in more steps into the step sequencer here. So if you resize it by this, you see you will get a lot more steps here. You can also resize it like this if you have more channels here. You can also resize it here if you have a lot of channels here and you want this channel rack window to get bigger. So you can do that. You can also press here to get different groups of channel racks. You can also resize the name here, so you see, now I can see it says classical acoustic here, which I couldn't do before, so you can resize the whole track name button here by doing it like that. You can also play and pause this pattern by clicking this button here. And here we have the main swing parameter, as you can see here. And here we have the graph editor, so you can modify the different parameters of each note in the selected pattern here. So you see you have note, velocity, release, find pan, and other stuff like that. Then we have the piano roll overview, so you can just switch between the different views of having it like a step sequencer or having it more like a piano roll. So if you have it on like this, or if you have it on like this, but you can see the piano roll view in this selected track, you can always just right click to get the piano roll up like this. And now we can just edit different stuff and just close it by pressing the right click here again. So let's say that I want to edit the kick here. I can do a very simple thing like that, and I can enable and disable the tracks here. So let's disable the keys now and just having the kick here. And let's say that I want to create more advanced kind of notation here. I can just click here, I get up the piano roll, right click here, and now I can see my notes. I can also see the notes of the other track that I have here, but they are grayed out. And this is just because it's a lot simpler to create notes when you can see your other tracks notes as well. For instance, if you're creating a chord progression and then you want to create a melody on top of that, that is very handy to use. So as you can see here, I have a chord progression now and I can just draw up some melody if I would want to. But in this instance, I'm just creating the kick, so that wouldn't make a lot of sense. But as you can see here, I just right click on it and to open and close it. So it's very handy to have as well. And then I can go back to this view if I want to. So just left click to get the notes right up, and just right click to delete them as well. And as I showed you before, you can just fill each 2 steps like that. You can fill each 4 steps. Let's get rid of that. Then we can enable and disable the track here. You have the track pan and you have the track volume, and then you have the selection of where you want to assign your track to the mixer. Let's create a new pattern. So I'm going to go to the plus sign here, and let's name these drums like that. All right. So now I have a drums pattern here, and I want to create a kick drum, fill each 4 steps, of course, and then I want to fill each 8 steps. Hats, I want to fill each 2 steps. Snare, each 8 steps as well. And I want to move the clap and snare to these positions. Alright, so what you can do here in the channel rack is to group different things together. And what I mean by grouping is to basically sort the tracks in the channel rack to having them listed here in the list. Because let's say that you have hundreds and hundreds of different tracks in the channel racks and different sounds. You will be scrolling through the channel rack all the time when you're producing your music. And that can be annoying because maybe you just can't find the instrument that you want to work with, or let's say that you're just focusing on the drums, for instance. Then it's a lot easier to create groups here. So let's say that I want to group all of these 4 instruments together, or these tracks here together. You can just select them here with this little, as you can see here, this box here. As soon as they are green, you can just have them selected, or that is a track that is selected. But let's say that I want to select all of these 4 here. You can just select them like that. And when they are selected, you just go here to the channel rack options here, and you can find the group selected ones. So now let's call these drums again. And as you can see, this is now a new option in the list here. So I can just pull up the drums here, and this will only show the drums. So I can alter between all of the tracks, drums for instance. And let's say that I want to have more melodic things or piano or stuff like that. I can just group piano sounds as well and have them sorted as an option in the list as well. Thing that is very cool with the grouping in the channel rack is that you can color all of these tracks here, and you can make a gradient of it. So if I go to color selected and gradient here, I can choose the first color. Let's say that I want it to be black. Or yeah, let's choose whatever color. Okay, black. And then I can choose the second color. So let's say I want it to be green. So now it will actually make a color gradient of from the first color to the second color. And that would make it a lot easier to find these instruments if I color gradient, let's say from yellow to white or from blue to white, and then you can see that okay, these tracks are the drums and these tracks are, let's say, piano sounds or other melodic sounds. Yeah, you can do it like that, of course. What I do most often is to just create lists here in the channel rack, and yeah, I can sort the different things here as well. But yeah, sometimes you just throw in different instruments just to try them out, you know, and it can be very messy here in the channel rack if you're just playing out with different instruments all the time and just throwing in sounds in there all the time. But as soon as I'm away from that creative moment and I want to actually start to arrange the track and yeah, just create the track basically, then I always do it like this. I organize all of these instruments and all of these tracks in the channel rack, and that makes it a lot easier to create mix downs later on, and yeah, just to arrange the track basically. So it's very, very important to stay organized when you're creating your track. And yeah, as I said before, just separate the creative process and the more organized process. So you want to be kind of messy when you're just creating your track, you know, and getting like creative. Just don't focus on like grouping and listing when you're creative. I mean, for me, that's the most important thing, that I want to be creative and I just can throw in different stuff and try out all of the different combinations of sounds. But then you eventually have a very nice idea of a track, and then you want to arrange the track and actually finish the track. And then these different things here with organizing a list and organizing here and coloring and stuff, that is very important. But otherwise you can just have thousands of tracks, let's say, and you can't find that sound that you created before, because you have so many tracks and you can't differentiate them between, because you didn't make colors and group them together or stuff like that. So I have these notes laid out like this. So let's go to graph editor, and now I want to modify. Let's say I want to have the clap, for instance. I want to shift the notes a little bit forward, just to have that more human kind of feeling when you're having the clap. So this is the note, so I want to shift it just a little bit like this, and let's take a listen to it. Just overdo it so you can hear what I'm doing here when I'm shifting the note. Let's say that I want to have the velocity in the, let's say, hi-hats here. I want them to be more kind of like a human is actually playing the hi-hats. So maybe something like that. Already sounds much better like that. One more thing that I want to show you here in the channel rack is that you can go to, let's say that I want to select all of these 4 tracks here, and I have a long list of different tracks, and I want to kind of get more space for other instruments. What I can do here is to go to zip selected, and now you can see all of these tracks are kind of hidden here, but you can still see by the color what track it is. So this saves you a lot of space if you have a lot of different channel rack tracks here. You can actually open them up like this. So yeah, just click on them like that. And you can also just right click on the track to kind of unzip it as well. So just to get back to how it was. Thing that I really like to have, and this is a must for me every time when I produce with FL Studio, is to go to the channel rack options here and choose detached. That way, if I do something else in FL Studio, I always have the channel rack open up like this. So I can just put it like here in the lower bottom, and now I can work on my track like that. And if I want to let's say I want to go to one of the tracks, I can just put it up on the list here. Let's say I want to go to the drums, and now I can modify the drum sounds or just modify the different notes of that instrument. So just right click like that to get the piano roll and to get rid of the piano roll, and then I can keep moving on with the arrangement here like that. There are also more options here in the channel rack. So if you right click on one of the tracks here, you have the piano roll, of course, graph editor. Then you have the rename color and icon, which is very handy to use. I just showed you that before, but I just want to mention it one more time here. So you can rename the track and color it as well. Let's go here. All right, so we have change color, change icon. You can choose whatever icon you want here, like that. just to make it stand out more. You can load a new sample here, for instance. You can insert something else, so you can insert a VST plugin, for instance, here. So you can do it like that as well. You can replace, so you can replace this track with an VST instrument. You can clone it. So let's say you want the exact same kick here, you can just press it like that and you clone it. Then we have delete, so you can delete the track, get rid of it. Nice feature here as well is to cut or copy. So let's say that I have steps here in the step sequencer that I want to copy on to, let's say, the snare here. I can just go and paste it like this, and I get the same information, the MIDI information, as I copied here. What you can also do is to rotate, so you can get them in time, the notes in time, but just shifted. So if you take a listen to it, and you will hear what it actually does. So that covers the basics of the channel racks. I hope you learned a lot from this video, and I hope to see you in the next lecture. Hey guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture I'm going to talk about the mixer in FL Studio. So to open up and close the mixer, you go to this button here, view mixer, like that. You can also press F9 to enable and disable the mixer. Let's move it here a bit. Okay, so here are all of the tracks that we have right now in our mixer. You can also choose different views of the mixer. So let's say you want compact, you can see all of these different tracks here. There's a lot of them. And the mixer is basically where you would send all of your sounds and create different effects. You can set volumes, you can pan them. And you can group different things together so they sound like one. You can just put on different effects to it. So let's say you want to compress sounds together, or you want to create reverbs, delays, all of the different stuff. EQ, for instance, which is very important to do. And you do that all in the mixer here. So that is why the mixer is very important and what makes your track becomes alive, you know. First track here is the master track. So the master track is where all of the sound will output through FL Studio. So all of the sound that you hear from your speakers would come through the master track. So that is basically the output, the sound output of FL Studio. So all of the tracks combined will output through the master channel. Then we have all of the individual tracks in the mixer here. So what you can do to assign these different tracks to the mixer is to go to the channel rack here and select whatever pattern you want to have, or if you want to select all of the different instruments in your channel rack, then you will see this dialog here that you can set whatever mixer channel you want that sound to be assigned to in the mixer. So let's say I want my other classical acoustic sound here to be set to insert 3, then you will see the insert 3 is now selected here. And you can rename color and icon. So let's say I want this to be named as our instrument in the channel rack, our track here in channel rack. I can set a color here as well. So now you can see that this is the track in the mixer and this is the track that is linked to it. So the track in the channel rack, the classical acoustic, is linked to the mixer channel number 3 here in our mixer. So all of the sounds that comes through the classical acoustic sound here, so let's say that I play this sound, it will output through this mixer channel first, through all of these settings here. And what I mean by the settings here is all of the things that you will set here, which I will go through in a moment here. And when that is done, it will output through the master channel. And on the master channel, you can also have a set of plugins here as well that will affect all of the tracks in the mixer. So let's take a look at this right-hand side of the mixer. As you can see here, we have different slots. So all of the slots here is basically space for you to open up different effect plugins. So let's say that we want this classical acoustic sound to have a compressor. Then you can go to here Dynamics and Fruity Compressor, for instance, which is a Fruity Loop built in compressor plugin, and now I can set the different effects for this compressor to be affecting only this sound, or only whatever is outputted through mixer channel 3. You can also combine different effect plugins. So let's say that you want a compressor first, and then you want a delay plugin, for instance. So now you have the compressor and the delay plugins after each other. Then you can also set how much of the effect you want to be outputted through this sound here. So let's say that I only want half of the compression, and the other half would be not compressed sound or not compressed signal. And then you can set the same thing with the delay. You can choose how much you want, or you can choose all of the settings here, that all of the signal is coming through these settings, through these plugins. So basically what you do here is to just set how much of the signal you want to be affected off this plugin here. You can also enable and disable each of the plugins here. So let's say you want A and B different settings, you want to try them out. You can listen to your track and disable and enable them. That is very handy to use. Then you have an EQ section here, so you can EQ your sound with this graphical interface here. You can also do it with these meters here, like that. And you have different settings here as well, so you can set the different X and Y angles of this EQ, like that. You can use this EQ, but what I do most often is to choose an EQ from the plugins here. And you have a lot of, like, a very good different EQ plugins from FL. This one is pretty good, but we have another plugin here. Let's replace that with the Parametric EQ2. And this is a very nice, it sounds good, and it's very transparent, so you won't have your sound be affected or colored by this EQ. So it's very nice to use, it's very easy to use as well. It looks all very similar to FabFilter plugins, which I like a lot. So Fruity Loops has this built-in, which is very nice. And you can see you have different tonality of the EQs as well here. You can see where the sub should be of the EQ, bass, low mid, mid, high mid, and so on and so forth. So you can see what you're actually doing here. So let's say that you have a sound that have a lot of bass, but you want to get rid of the sub, then you know that you should go down around here to get rid of the sub, basically. Resize the mixer window by doing like this and like that. And as I showed you before, you can choose different view settings of the mixer. What I use most often is this extra large, because I get I get a very nice overview of the tracks here. I can see the signal coming through and all of these stuff. I'm also going to show you in a moment what all of these settings does. And you can also see the different plugins named here in each of the tracks. So you necessarily don't have to go to the right hand side, but you know, they are there anyway, so you can just take a look at the selected track here. But let's say that you're out of focus, let's say you're somewhere here, you can see that these plugins are set on this track, so you don't have to select that track to see the plugins here. One thing that I really like to do in the mixer is to go to the view here and set the track inspector on left side. That would show the plugins on this side instead, and I don't have to really go to this side. But this is how I prefer it. Look at the individual mixer channel track here. So first you have the track name here and track number. Then you have enable and disable. You have the panning here. Then you have the volume meter and volume level. After that we have track latency. We have arm disk recording, stereo separation, and you can swap left and right channels here. Here you have the amount of stereo separation that you want. You can do it like that. Then we have the names of the plugins here. Then we have enable effect slots, so you can enable or disable all of these plugins here. And that is it for the individual mixer channel here. As well is to, let's say I select one of these mixer channels here. I can select in the channel rack here, I can select, let's say, all of the drums here. And I'll go to the mixer here and just right click and channel routing, route selected channels starting from this track. So now you can see all of these selected instruments here, selected tracks in the channel rack are routed to the mixer. So now you can see, instead of creating or assigning all of these individual tracks to a separate mixer track, then renaming them, color them, and so on and so forth. So now all of this is done automatically, and by choosing to route these tracks to the mixer. So now they are renamed and colored and everything like that. So that is very nice to use, and you will see all of these here. So let's say that I want to put on a reverb on a snare, for instance. So now I have the slots here on the left hand side. So I have the snare mixer channel selected, and I can go to, let's say here I want a reverb, so let's go to the Fruity Reverb 2 here. You can see I have a reverb on just the snare here. A lot of different options in the mixer here. You can right click here in the mixer and see a lot of different things you can do. Same thing goes here with the routing of the signal. So let's say that we now have all of our instruments here. You can see that these instruments are routed to this instrument. So let's get rid of that. Now you can see that, let's say that let's get rid of all of these here, like that. All right, so now you can see that this track goes through a cable that is kind of invisible here and goes to this track. So what that means is that the sound that comes through this track goes through the master, right? So then we have the same thing there, same thing there, and same thing there. So what you can do here is to route, let's say I want to route all of the drum signal here. Let's say that I want all of these, let's say just the drum section here. I want all of the drum sounds to be routed through insert 1, which will make our drum bus here. I can do that by just selecting them as I did before with the control or command click and just dragging them over like that. And then I can just right click on our track that we want it to be routed to and just press on route to this track only. And now you can see that the signal is routed through here. So then if you go to the insert, you can see that the insert itself is routed to the master. So the signal will now travel, all of these 4 mixer channel signal will travel through to this insert 1, and then the signal will travel through the insert 1's plugins if you have any, and then to the master. So it will actually go, instead of going through the master immediately, it will go through the insert 1 first, and that will make us a drum bus here. Separate these different mixer channels. So you can see we have drums here, then we have some classic acoustic instrument, and we have a piano. So it may be nice to just separate things here. So I can just go and press and create a separator between these tracks. Then we can create a separator between this track, like that. So now you can see we have our drum sections here. So these are kind of separated between all of these other mixer channels here. So that is a very basic overview of the mixer. You can see I just tried out the volume here, enabled and disabled the track. I panned it a bit. I create a stereo width here. I can also set the sound to be switched a bit in time with milliseconds, samples or beats. Yeah, and you can just create stereo width here as well, and you can enable and disable plugins if you have any on, like on this track. So you can do that by just clicking and clicking it again to enable and disable the plugins. To show you here in the mixer is that you can actually change the volume meter here to, instead of a dB meter, you can have it set to a waveform meter. You can do it by going to view here and switch it to waveforms. So now if I play here, you can see that all of these volume meters will show up as waveform meters. That is very handy to use if you want to see how big of a signal you have and where the signal is and all of the other stuff. That is very handy with waveforms. Alright guys, so that is it for the mixer, and I think you got a nice overview of the mixer here in FL Studio, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture I'm going to go through the playlist in FL Studio. So the playlist is basically where you arrange your track. So when you're creating your channel rack tracks here in the channel rack, you can just create them as clips, and then you take the clips into the playlist here. And you will basically build up your whole arrangement with these clips inside of the playlist. And by the way, I'm using the term clips because that is how it's used in Ableton and Logic, for instance, but in FL Studio you call them patterns. So each pattern has their own individual clip. So let's say that I have this pattern 1 here, and I create this pattern 1 that contains this beat of kick drums. Now I can just take this pattern 1 and just paste it in to the playlist here, and then I can paste it whatever I want, how much I want of it. I can do it like that. I can also delete it by right click at that, and yeah, it's very easy to do that. So if you want to create a new pattern, you just click plus here. You can rename it, so let's say hi-hats here, like that, and now I can choose between the different patterns here, or I can just scroll between the patterns here. So to arrange the pattern, you need to select the pattern that you want to arrange, and then just click simply into the playlist here to have that pattern inside of the playlist. So it is very easy to build up your track in FL Studio and just arrange the track by just creating these different patterns and just taking it into the playlist here and arrange the track by doing that. Alright, to get a bit of a better understanding of the playlist in FL Studio, let's open up the FL Studio demo project that comes with FL Studio. So let's just click File here, and you can go to Recent Projects and New Stuff.flp. So as you can see, this is the demo project that FL Studio comes with, and it's a complete track here. It's a very nice kind of EDM track that comes with FL Studio, and you can see it's made by Adam Shabo and Johan Wilborg. And yeah, it may differ between your version and my version. Sometimes ImageLine has different demo projects, but in this case it's this track. So let's take a very quick listen to the track just so you can see how amazing tracks can be done inside of FL Studio.
There's a light over the ocean. There's a wind touching me. Another planet set in motion. Could finally set us free.
So you can see how much of information there is. There's a lot of different audio here, it's a lot of MIDI, and you can see how quickly it works. FL Studio responds very quickly to every single instrument here. So yeah, FL Studio has a lot of potential here. You can see that this amazing track is made inside of FL Studio with just some patterns here, as you can see. And this is basically how the playlist works. So as you can see, it's just patterns, as I explained before how the patterns works. So as soon as I click on the pattern, I can just double click it here to get the piano roll, and if I select the pattern here, you can see that in the channel rack, this is the track that is being used, and here's the plugin for that particular sound. Let's take a look at the playlist, how it works. So here at the top you can see the scroll bar here. You can scroll through the project in time like this. You can also see the time signature, so you can see how many bars there are here. You can zoom like this. You can see vertically and horizontally as well, like that. But there is a much more efficient way to scroll in FL Studio. So if you hold Alt and just scroll, you will see that it will zoom horizontally like this. And if you hold Control or Command on Mac and scroll, you will see you will get this vertically like that. Alright, so one more thing about the pattern selection here. You can right click here to get all of the different patterns that you have in the projects. And you can also see the different patterns in this way. So you can see this is the patterns which is made by in the piano roll. So you can see all of the different MIDI data here. So if I double click, you can see the MIDI data. Then we have the different audio samples that are inserted here in the playlist. So you can just basically drag in an audio sample directly into the playlist, and then you will see it in this list. So let's say that let's say I want a drum loop here. So as you can see, now it's inserted here, and I can just choose a new track here. Let's say that I want it on track 58, and now I can just enable it like that, and it will actually play in beat with the project. We have the automation tracks. So you can automate basically everything in FL Studio, and I will cover automation in a later section in this course. But this is where the automations will be. So the automations are basically exactly laid out as a clip here or a pattern. So you can just take one of these patterns here, and this will be automation information. So you can just have it, drag it out like a normal track. You can actually see that. So here's the pad. So the chords is a group. Then we have pad, which is MIDI information. Then we have automation of that chords and pad section. Then you have different section here as well. And then we have automation for that. So you can see it by the icon here. So you can see automation here. And as soon as I hold over this icon here, you can see in the information section here what this does. So you can see this is actually a sawtooth, and it's a synthesizer. So it's a synth with a sawtooth in it. And then we have automation here. Here we have a pulse wave from a synthesizer as well. And here we have just melodic score. And by the way, if you're zoomed in like this and you don't know where you are, basically, you can just hold Control or Command on Mac and just right click. Then you're just zoomed out into the maximum zoomed out view possible. Let's talk a bit about the different tools that we have in the playlist. So you can see here we have our little toolbox here, which I call it. And you can see draw is the first one, paint, delete, mute, slip, slice, select, zoom, and playback. So there are different tools here. They are very similar to the ones that are in the piano roll, and they work exactly the same here, but with the clips or the patterns here. So let's select a pattern here. I'm just going to select a random pattern like baseline number 2, for instance, just to demonstrate how this works. So let's do that. Let's zoom in a bit, and let's just put it there. All right. Zoom in like that. Okay, so here we have our baseline number 2, and because we have our paint tool enabled here, I can just draw out different patterns and clips like this. Just delete them by right clicking the mouse as well. So let's say that I have the draw tool here. I can just put one of these clips, and if I left click and hold, it's not actually painting out the patterns here. I'm just going to move them. So if I select one of these, I can just move them like that. So this is very handy to have as well. Then we have our delete tool. So this is basically the same thing as right clicking on the clip. So like that, but you can do that with the left click instead. Then we have our mute tool. So if I click on one of the clips, you will see it will get muted. If I click it again, it will unmute it. Then we have slip. You can see I'm moving the MIDI data inside of this pattern here. We have our slice tool, and this is basically how much and where you want to move or cut a pattern. Then we have our select tool here. You can select different clips like this. So let's say that I want to select 3. I can just do it like that. Then I can go to the draw tool and move all of these 3 clips. We have the zoom tool. You can just select what you want to zoom in like that. You can go even further like this, and you can just go to command or control and click to zoom out. Then we have playback, so if you click one of these patterns here, you can just play that pattern. Just like that. And to make this a lot easier to do, instead of going and clicking here every time you want to, let's say you want to do anything, it's a lot better to just memorize these different key commands here. So as you can see, as soon as I hold on one of these tools here, you can see the key command for that tool in the info box. So you can see, for instance, the draw tool. If I click P, I just go to the draw tool. If I click B, I will go to the paint tool, and so on and so forth. So let's say that I want to, select. You can see, you can also see that if I right click and hold, I can do the same thing here. So let's say that I want to select, slice, and then draw. So I have P, C, and E. All right. So first I want to draw. So let's just click on P. As you can see, nothing is really happening right now. And this is because we have this on and this enabled right now. It's typing keyboard to piano keyboard. So if you have this enabled, every single keystroke here on your keyboard will be an actual, like a MIDI keyboard playing. So you will play exactly like if you would be playing on a MIDI keyboard. And this is for all of the different keys you have on your keyboard, on your computer keyboard, you know. So let's disable this for now. And now all of the different key commands that is showing up in the info tool here will work. So P to draw, then we have C to slice, E to select, for instance. So P, now the draw tool is enabled here. Then we have the C, which is our slice tool, and E to select. And you can just work very quickly by memorizing these different key commands here. There are a lot of different things you can do with these clips. So let's say that I want to, change color on this clip, for instance. So as soon as I just click on the left-hand side of the clip, you'll get a pattern clip options window. So as you can see, you can preview this, you can select source pattern, edit pattern, you can rename and color, change color, and so on and so forth. So let's say I want to rename and color just this clip here. So let's say that I want to call it chords alternative, because let's say that I changed it up a little bit. So I want to create a different color for this one, just so I can see that this clip is a bit different. So I can do it like that, and now you can see this clip, which is linked to this first one here, is changing the colors. And you can, if let's say that I want to do it with just this one and leave this one alone, because they are now linked, because they are the same pattern, I can make it unique. So let's say that I will do it like this, and now you can see it created a new pattern for us, which is the same one, but this is now not linked with the first one. So let's say that I want to rename and color it. I can do it with this one, and you can see it's doing its own thing right now. What you also can do is to put the different pattern clips on whatever track you want here, basically. So it's not locked to the track that you have here. So you can just basically put it wherever you want. Say that I have a clip put in. Let's say I have it somewhere around here, this side, on a new track like that. And you can see this is named something different, and the track is just named track 58 or track 59 in this instance. So what I can do here is to just rename it. I can go to rename color and icon, and I can call it chords pattern, and I can color it the same as our clip here, and that will be fine, you know. But what you can do is to just go and auto name. So now this will be the same name as our clip here, or as our pattern clip, and it will actually do the naming and coloring for us. All of the different tracks here, all the different patterns here are basically grouped together. You can see here in the vocal group, kick group, which contains a lot of different patterns here. So how do you group a track? It's very easy. Just go to the second track, the second pattern that you want to group with the first pattern. So let's say we have two patterns here. I just go to the second one and choose group with above track. So now you can see this one here is the group, and this is the, so basically this group is now containing these two patterns here. And if I want to group even more tracks, I can just go to the next one here and choose group with above track. As you can see, they are now in the same group here. Here you can also see in the playlist the different lines here. You can see that it's kind of like a grid. Let's zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm talking about here. You can see all of the different lines here, which just tells you the time signature of the track. So I can just move this like that, and it will stay in the right time. So you can change the fine-tuning of the timing here. So basically how you want the different patterns to be set in time by going to this list here. You can see it's now set on line, but you can change it to cell, you can change it to 1/6 step. So yeah, so let's say we want it to be 1/6 step. You can see now it's only snapping to each of these grids here, as you can see, like that. And we can also go to none, so now it's basically just random here. You can set it exactly where you want, so it can be out of tune, like, or out of timing, like that. So that is how you do it with the time signature in FL Studio's playlist. So let's go back to the line here. Happy about how this different pattern clips looks like. It's very easy to customize that. So if you're in the playlist view here and you have the playlist window open, you can just go to this one here, and let's go to view, and let's go to behind clips, for instance. Here you can choose, let's say that I don't want anything in the background, like that, or I can choose some different things here, let's say aqua, like that, and now you can really see the different clips here. I will go back to how I had before, so let's go to view here and just go to cell. But I really want to show you that you can choose a lot of different things here. You can see grid color, resize all tracks. You can do a lot of different customization in FL Studio, and this is really unique to FL Studio because different digital audio workstations, they have different kind of customizations as well, but I think FL Studio has the most one. There's so much you can customize in FL Studio, it's crazy. If we zoom out a bit in this project here, you can see that there are a lot of different markers here in the arrangement. And how do you do that? You just simply go to wherever you want it to be, just right click here, add marker. And now we can call it whatever. So let's actually call it whatever. And now you can see it, it appears here. So you can do that by just, you know, you want to see where, let's say, our chorus starts or verse starts. That is really nice to have. What you can do with this as well is to put a new time signature. So you can see the time signature for this part until this part here is 3/4, and then we have 4/4 time signature. So you can change the time signature of the track in time here by just doing the same thing, but instead of going to add marker, you just go to add a time signature. And this is what is done here. So you can set time signature if you want to change it. So you can just change it to whatever you want. We can listen to just listen to this track, and you will hear what it does with this 3/4 and 4/4 time signature change. That's actually a really nice track. I really like this demo track. It's amazing. But still, as you can see, 3/4 and 4/4. So that is a time signature change that you can do with the marker, basically. What you can do here is to place loop. So if I place a loop here, it will loop to that region. So let's see that I play here, and that it will loop to there. So let's delete that loop. So that is a basic overview of the playlist in FL Studio, and I really hope you learned the basic functions of the playlist. With all of the knowledge that I teach you here in this section of the course, you can actually create a track of this. I mean, the FL Studio playlist is so versatile, and there are so many functions that we can really dig deep in. But just to create a track, it's very, very easy to just do it with the knowledge that I teach you in this video, in this lecture here. And my really big pro tip here is to just stay organized. So you can see all of the different patterns here are very, very organized with how they look by coloring, naming, grouping, and yeah. Besides what I did here actually, because I just show you how to do the groups and just experimented a bit. But what I mean here is with this track here, with the demo project, you can see everything is so organized, named, colored, and yeah, you can see exactly where everything is. So a pro tip to you guys is to stay organized when you produce. It's a lot easier to create a very nice track by doing this. Let's say that you're not organized and you're placing stuff everywhere, and you're just playing your track and you don't know what's going on, or why it sounds bad, or why it sounds out of tune or something like that, because you're not organized, you're not staying organized with your track. And then it's a lot more difficult to just see the error that you want to fix, you know. If you were more organized, if you were coloring and naming everything, then you will see where you have this error, for instance. Alright guys, so let's see you in the next lecture. Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, I'm going to cover project templates in FL Studio. So this is actually how I'm starting out my projects every time. So to open up a new template, you just go to File, New from Template, and you can choose the different template that FL Studio comes with. So why do you use templates? And this is basically because you want to use, or you want to start your project each and every time the same way, kind of. And what I mean by that is to, let's say that you use some different plugins every time. You don't want to set up all of the different setups for those plugins every time you want to start a project. Because let's say that you are into that kind of creative statement and you just want to create music. So let's say you always want to create chords with a certain like piano plugin, for instance. then you can have that piano plugin set up. You can have that routed to, let's say, a reverb or an echo, and then you can have limiters, and you can have different stuff on the master, for instance. And if you have that set up as a project template, you just open up the project template and you're good to go. You can just start to create your chord progressions and stuff like that without having to open up the piano and create routings for your reverbs or other things like that. And FL Studio comes with different project templates. So as you can see here, I have the EDM/house template open up, and this is a really nice project template, I think, because it's already organized within the playlist. As you can see, there are different colors for different stuff here. You have the kick, snare, hi-hat, cymbals, and that is inside a drums group, for instance. And now it's just a matter of me to open up the channel rack here. I can import different audio to this tracks here in the channel rack, or I can just create a new one and set that up to the mixer channel. So as you can see here, if I go to the mixer channel, all of the channels here are already set up, so I can just let's say create a new instrument here, and I can just group that to whatever mixer channel I want. And let's say that I have a riser, for instance. I can just take a riser from my samples here and just put it on this track, and it's already routed to one mixer channel, and it's already named and colored. And then I can just put that clip onto the riser here, which is already grouped to the FX group. So I don't have to create groups, and I don't have to actually name or color anything here. And you're not doing this because you don't want to rename your tracks or rename your playlist or patterns or anything. It's not that. You want to have your project template because you want to start your project as fast as you can. Because let's say that you have a chord progression in your head and you want to have that chord progression created in your track, and you want to, let's say you want to create a big full song out of it. And then you're creating a new project without anything, and you have to open up a piano roll, you have to open up and choose a plugin for that piano, and in that time you may forgot about your chord progression that you had in your head, or you're just stuck with different technical stuff that can get your creative ideas out of the way, you know. So it's a lot better to have your project template, and you don't need to use the FL Studio's built-in project template. So let's say that you have all of these templates here, but let's say that you're using some plugins that you like, you know, and they are not in these templates that FL Studio comes with. You can just create a new template or a new FL Studio project file if you want to. Then you can create your routings, you can create your tracks like this, and you can set up different mixer channels as well. Then you can just save this template, or you can save this project as it is without any sounds or anything. You can just have plugins, you can have different names, you can have colors like this one, you can have it organized like that, but without anything in the playlist. If you have it like that, you can just go to File, Save As, and then let's say that I want to create a template. Then you can just go to templates here and you can save it as it is. So let's say my own template here, and I save it in the folder of templates, which should be in the FL Studio folder. So if I create it like that, if I save it here, so if I now restart FL Studio as I done in the background here, I can go to File, New from Template, and this is my own template. Now it will load up with this template that I created, for instance. So I really recommend you to create a brand new project. Okay, so let's create a new one, and we want a new one, so we don't want anything else. And you can do that by go to minimal here and just an empty. So this is totally empty. It doesn't contain anything. And first of all, I would set the tempo. So use the tempo that you're most familiar with, that you're creating the most tracks with. For instance, I create a lot of progressive house music, and sometimes I create slower tracks, I create faster tracks sometimes, but most often I'm most comfortable with 128 BPM. So I set it up like that, and then I can go to this different playlists and tracks in the playlist. So what I can do here is to rename color and icon. So first one would be the kick drum. I always color the kick drum in red like that. And then we have different drums. So I would just do drums, drum tracks in orange, and I would create drums 1, drums 2, same color like that, and drums 3. So what I mean by this is now that I have this set up here, I can just throw in different samples from the browser here. Let's say I want a kick drum, I can just put in a kick drum here, just drop it there. Same thing goes with different drums. So if I would have to have one more drum section, for instance, I can just create that track. But it's nice to have something to start out with. So now I can just throw in different samples without having to worry about, let's say that, where should I put the drums, or I put the drums here and then I put some piano sound here, and it starts to get not organized, you know. But if you put it like this and you have a nice starting point where you can just organize things, it will be a lot easier then to clean up the project and, you know, create a new, fresh, organized project. So I would do the same thing here. Let's say that I want some synth sounds. Let's do it like this in this color. Piano, I always use a piano sound like that. Maybe a bass here. Let's go with something darker with the bass. What do we have more? Synth, piano, bass, kick, drums, and that is basically what I will start out with, I think, for now. So let's close that. So now I can just throw in my different ideas. So let's say that I have a piano or I have a chord progression that I want to create. I can just create a new chord progression and throw it into this track here and start to create my simple, very simple short arrangement. Then I can create a kick drums and everything like that. Then if I create some more tracks, I can just start to create them here as I produce the track, you know, because you don't know what you should use in the project before you even start the project. So this is just a very simple way to start out with your project and set everything up so you don't have to redo stuff like that. And also what I like to use here is to go to the channel rack and create, this is a sampler as you can see. I want it to be like that because I can throw in different audio here and try it out. And then I also like the FL keys, which is a piano. So let's like that. So let's have it in like that as well. Then I like to use the 3x oscillators, which is 3 oscillators that I can try out different bass sounds with. I can choose the different shapes here of the oscillators and just create some different cool stuff. So I always have that in as well. So now I have a sampler, I have FL keys, and I have oscillators in here as well. So now it's very easy for me to start out with a track. So let's say that I want to create FL keys and I have a chord progressions that I want to create. I can just throw in different stuff here. Alright, so that is now I can just create this, so I put it here in the piano, and now I can start to create the arrangement with the kick drum, drums, and other stuff like that. And I also want to set up something or mixer channels in the mixer section here. And I basically do the same thing as I have in the channel rack here and what I have in my playlist. So let's say I have the kick drum here, and I have drums 1, 2, and 3, I always want to set up one track for the kick drum. So let's do the same thing, kick, and put it on red. Then I do one mixer channel for the drums, which will be a bus basically. And a bus is a group of different sounds and different instruments and audio samples. So whatever I have put in here in drums 1, 2, and 3 should go through this bus here, kick and drums. And then I have synth, so let's do the same thing here, synths, I would call it like that. And this is just to group the different synths together. And as you can see with the coloring here, you have the recent used colors here, so you don't have to search for the colors. And so let's do it like that, synths. Then we have bass sounds, okay? So now I have my 4 different sounds that I want to group them together within the mixer channel. And so let's say that I create a piano, I create, let's say a guitar sound for instance. All of that I want it to be grouped into the synth, because I want to create a compressor for sounds that are in the mid section of the EQ spectrum, and let's say bass sounds where I want to cut everything that is in the higher frequency spectrum. And yeah, so same thing goes with the drums here and the kick. So what I would do first thing here, so for the kick drum I will leave it as it is. Drum section I will go with a compressor, so let's go with a fruity compressor here. And what you can do here is to go to the presets that shows up here, and for a nice drums compression, just go with the drums preset here and leave it as it is basically. And for the drums I also want to EQ out the lowest low end, because that is where we want our bass to be. And this is very important when you're creating mixdowns, because otherwise you will have to have an EQ on almost every single channel. So you don't want that. You want different sounds to be grouped to these 4 buses, or if you have more buses you can create that as well. The buses are basically groups that you're grouping different sounds together with, and then you're treating them as one. So let's go with the paramedic EQ here, and I can just lower the lowest end of the EQ here. So I put it like that. Now we have drums being, as you can see here, just cut it off on the low end. And this is why we have different groups for the kick drum and the drums. Because with the kick, basically a kick drum is a drum, right? But with the kick drum, especially in electronic dance music, you have the kick drum with a lot of bass in it. Because if you would cut off the bass from the kick drum, it would not be powerful and your track would sound like, it would not sound good at all, you know. So you want the bass to be there with the kick drum, and that is why I have the kick drum left out of the drums group. So I have that for the drums group, and then we go to the synths. So in the synths group, I want it to be actually kind of the same thing here. Let's go with a fruity compressor, and you can do a full reset vintage mix for instance. But what I would like to do here is to go to a third-party plugin, which is all for free. You can find it in the description of this course. So what we can do here is to go to more plugins, and now I can find all of my different plugins on my computer. So I will search for OTT, which is the plugin that I'm referring to from Extra Records. It's for free, so let's just use it like that. And now I put this depth here into about let's say 12%, something like that. And what this does is it's a downwards compressor. It's a bit complicated. I don't actually know the exact thing that the OTT does, and I made some research, you know, about it, and there are some different YouTube videos that tries to explain this, but still I don't really exactly know what it does. But it's a multiband compressor and it sounds awesome. So I think it sounds best when it's set around here in the depth, around let's say 1/4 here. And you can use this on almost everything, but you should use it on the buses and not on the individual sounds, because if you do it too much, it will sound too flat and your track will sound kind of boring. But if you do it like this within the groups, and especially on synth sounds or on drum sounds, that will sound amazing. I don't use it for the bass sounds, for instance, because a bass sound is kind of low in the frequency spectrum, so I want the bass sounds to be treated as one, basically. Because if you do it with the OTT, your drum section and your synths will start to sound like it comes a bit alive, you know. So in the bass sounds, you want to have control of the bass sounds more like that. So I would put the OTT as the first plugin here in the synth section, and then I will go with we have a synth section. So let's go with the delay, and I will put the wet signal to 0. So I will have the dial here, the mixer to 0, because now I can automate the delay. So let's say I want a delay for the synths. I can just automate this dial here to put more delay or less delay. Then I want a reverb here, and same thing goes here. I can either go with the wet signal here up and down, or I can just put this dial here, which I would do. So I would go to a 0 here. Then after that, I want to create an EQ, a paramedic EQ. Same thing goes here. I don't want any low end, and I don't want the highest frequencies as well. I would actually do it a bit narrower, because some of the synth sounds will have their the most sounding elements in around up to 16,000 hertz. So I would do it like that, and I'll also put it a bit higher like that as well. So now I have my synth mixer channel or mixer group set it up like that. Then let's go to the bass, and with the bass I want almost everything to be mono here. So it's very important to have your bass sounds in mono, because you don't want the bass sounds to start to rumbling around in different stereo settings and stuff like that, because you will get a very, very muddy sounding track, you know. So for bass sounds, create this bass track in mono. I'm going to go to a plugin, so let's go to the Fruity Stereo Shaper, and I'm going to load up a preset here, which is LR to LL. You can see this is basically taking the left signal and the right signal and put it to the left, and this is what mono is. So I'm going to take it like that, and now everything which will go through this bass group will be set in mono. Then I'm going to open up an EQ, so let's put this EQ, the Paramedic EQ2, just to get some better view here. And I'm going to put everything, let's say above 400 Hertz would be basically cut it off. And you can see that in this section here, you can see that the bass section starts around here, around to 300 Hertz. But I'm going to have it set to around 400 Hertz here. And the sub is going to around here, around, as you can see, 38 Hertz, somewhere around there. So I'm going to cut it up there as well, just to, we don't want the sub to be too much there, you know. So let's do it like that. So now we basically have everything going through the group of the bass mixer channel here, and it will go through mono. So it will first like getting the signal to be in mono, and then it will take all of that signal and cut off everything besides this section here in the frequency spectrum. And if you do this with all of your different sounds, you can see we use EQ for everything now. So let's say we have a bass section here in the frequency spectrum, then we have synth section, which will be here, around here, and then we have same thing with the drum section will be around here, but we're leaving space for the bass in this section and in this section, and here we have the bass sounds. So now if we create a mix down, it will actually sound clean. But we don't have to use our mixdown because we already have this set up in our templates. So now when we create our sounds and our track, you know, and put our different stuff, let's say we have a sampler, we can put it to synths immediately and FL keys as well. And we want this plugin to be made for different basses. So we create it for, we assign this to our fourth channel, which is our bass group here. So now we have a nice mixdown where we're creating your art. So we don't have to worry a lot about the different mixing things you have to do when creating your track, you know, because sometimes it sounds amazing when you're in that creative stage, you know, and you're throwing in a million different sounds and it sounds great. But then when you start to mixing, you feel like your track is getting like boring and very thin because you're starting to get rid of different stuff and you're putting things in mono and different stuff. But if you do it within the creative stage, when you're creating the track and you already had it set up like this, then when you're starting to create your mixdown, it will still sound amazing. So that is why it's really important to do it. And one more thing that we would like to do here is to go to the master. I would put our OTT plugin here as well. So let's go to more plugins. I will OTT, and I always use the OTT on my master, but I want to be kind of careful with this one for the master. And then I also want to have a limiter on, so I will go to Fruity limiter and just put it like that. And this will make the signal to just go to 0 dB and not above that, so we're not clipping our signal or anything like that. And you have to make sure that the Fruity limiter plugin is the last plugin in the plugin chain here for the master. And the limiter is, I think, the most important thing to have in your master, because that will limit the sound to 0 dB so it won't clip, even though you have volumes that are set like very, very loud here. So what I would do now, I will actually delete this pattern 1 here, and I would delete it like that. So now it's clean. I don't have anything on here. I can just start to create my track. So now I can just go to here, save as, and this is my best template. Save, and now I can just create my track by just going to my best template here. Alright guys, that is it for the project template section. Let's see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, I'm going to take a look at how to program drums in FL Studio. So first of all, I'm opening up this project that we created earlier in the course, and I'm going to go for the packs and drums. And as you can see here, we have different individual drums we can use for our beat, and we're going to produce a complete beat here. You can do that in several ways inside of FL Studio. You can either program it through the channel rack, so you can lay out each and every individual sample here in a channel rack, and then you can go with the step sequencer here to get the programming in time. And you can also choose the piano roll here instead of the step sequencer if you want to get one, let's say, one note in one side or the other side, for instance. Alright, so we're going to take this first method here, and yeah, let's just create a kick drum here. So let's find a nice kick drum. Let's take this one. So I'm going to create just a basic kick drum pattern here. I'm going to lower the tempo a bit to 120 BPM. Alright, so now we have our kick drum. I want to have a hi-hat as well. So let's choose a close hi-hat for now. Let's use this one. And we can do it like this, or we can just go and fill each 8 steps, or actually fill each 2 steps. Alright. Let's go with snare. And there we have our very, very simple basic beat here. So I want to make this hi-hat a bit more like a human is playing it, because now it's the same velocity here, so it sounds very, very computerized. So let's just right click on the instrument that you want to change, and here you can see all of our individual MIDI notes. And this is the MIDI notes that we created in the channel rack. So here you can also see the control, and you have the note velocity enabled here. So I can just take each and every single note here and just lower the velocity a bit, like this. And you can see each and every single marker here is corresponding to the note that we have here. So let's say that I create a note here, you will see that it actually created a note here as well in the control bar. So let's take a listen to it now. I think it's maybe too low in volume. You can also add notes to this to the piano roll here, so you can just create like this maybe. You can also hold shift and just scroll with the mouse to get the note a bit of the for the side, so you can see here. So there are a lot of different things you can do here in the piano roll. I could sit here and program drums for hours and hours, but I think you will be bored watching me just programming drums. So I just want to show you how to do this very, very quickly within the step sequencer and the channel rack. So as I explained before in the channel rack video, you can also go here and create the same thing here with the velocity, and you can also see the piano roll by just clicking here instead of the step sequencer. There are some different ways as well you can do it. So instead of going with the channel rack here, you can just close the channel rack here and just drag in the different individual drums into the playlist immediately. So if we just choose this dialog here, the audio clips in the picker, you can go to kick drums here, and let's import the same kick drum. So we want it to be in the kick drum section, and we really have to zoom in right now. So let's do that. Let's go back here. Okay. So now we have a kick drum, and now we can just pan it out like this. And this is way too zoomed in, so let's do it like this instead. So as you can hear, the playlist stops playing wherever the last audio sample is at. So it's going to be, it's not going to be in time here. So what we can do here is to just right click and hold for the selection that you want to play. And it will loop that section. So yeah, this is what you want to use when creating drums in this view here. All right, so now let's go for an hi-hat, and let's go for the close one. Same thing goes here, and now it can get a bit complicated if you have a lot of sounds which is very close to each other, but you can do with this. And you can see that the velocity is now the same, so if you want to lower the velocity, you actually have to go inside one of each and every single audio file here and lower the volume a bit. And you can see all of this are now linked to each other because we created the same. We actually just having the same audio file playing here, so I can't really do that as well. But what I can do here is to make unique as sample. And now we have a new sample here. So as you can see, it's number 2 and number 3, as you can see. So what I can do here now is to just double click, change the volume here and it will stay the same volume in there. Alright, so let's take the next element here and we're going to use the snare. So it puts our snare there. Let's lower the volume a bit, so we can do that by double clicking on the individual audio samples. Let's do the same thing with the hi-hat. So now we have our very basic simple drum beat here as well. There is one more method you can do. You can program your beats in FL Studio as well, and that is to use it with a plugin. So let's go back to the channel rack here and let's create a new plugin. I'm going to use the FPC plugin here. And here you can see this is like a drum machine. So there are already loaded up sounds here. And what you need to do here is to program the drums with the piano roll. So you can just go to FPC here, piano roll, and here you can see all of the individual drum sounds. So what you want to do here is to have to zoom in a bit first. Let's create that a bit bigger and use pattern. So as you can see, this way it's a lot easier to make some nice cool grooves with the beat. So I rarely use the FPC method, kind of drum machine method with the piano roll. What I use most often is to just take audio samples and lay them out in a playlist like this, and then just select them all and copy them over to where I want them to be in the track, basically. So you can do it all these different ways. I think you should try all of these 3 different ways to create beats. What I mostly often use actually is to just take loops that are pre-made, so pre-made drum loops for instance, and then cut out the different individual elements. So you can do that as well. I'm going to show you one of the drum loops that I use. Let's say here we have drum loops that comes with FL Studio. So what we can do here is just disable all of these tracks here and just listen to this one. Do now with this drum loop is to select the slicer here, and we can slice whatever we want. So let's say that we just want the kick drum here. Let's go back to the draw tool. So now we have a kick drum like this. Cool, so what we can do here now is I'm going to just borrow this track here, and just delete the snare there, and take the drum loop here again, and just use the snare for it. So here's the snare, Just select that as well. All right, let's take a listen to some other elements that we may use in our drum loop. Here's a clear hi-hat sample, so let's use that as well. Okay, so what we have now is an hi-hat, snare, and a kick drum here. So let's use the hi-hat here. Let's move the snare over to here maybe. All right, so I'm going to delete all of these and use the hi-hats here. And we're going to use the snare here. Let's select our area here. So you see how easy it is to just take a drum loop, an existing drum loop, and remake it to your own. Because now it sounds very much different from the original drum loop, but still you use some very nice high quality samples in there. And you can get inspired by just importing an existing drum loop and extracting it like this. And it works very, very easily. And I really love FL Studio about this, that the slicing functions and the different functions to just export different elements from a drum loop and just having it in like this is very, very nice to have. And you can see now how important it is to just have these different pre-made tracks here in the playlist, because now you can use them for the drums, for instance. Of course you can use it for in the empty track section here, but now we have them organized, so it's very easy now to have our drum loop like this. And yeah, it's very nice to work it like this. Alright guys, so I hope you learned a lot with this video, and I see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how to sidechain in FL Studio. So there are different ways you can sidechain in FL Studio. There are some different complicated ways as well. You can route different volume levels and link them to a sidechain, for instance, so the volume is ducking whenever some other elements are playing in your project, for instance. So you can do that by a lot of different methods actually, and but I'm going to show you the easiest method to sidechain, and that I use every time in FL Studio, and I know almost everyone is using this as well. So first of all, I'm going to create an instrument. I'm just going to go with the basic 3x oscillators here and just create a very, very basic kind of bass sound, you know, very basic sound, just so you can see what I'm doing here, just so you can see how I sidechain this as well. And if you don't know what sidechain is basically when the volume goes up and down automatically, and it's mainly used to duck the sound to get the kick drum in front of the mix. So whenever the kick drum is hitting, the volume of the other elements that are sidechain is going down, and it's only going down when the kick drum is playing, and then it's going up again. So that is basically what sidechain is, and what sidechain is mainly used for. But you can use sidechain in other ways as well, but the main thing with sidechain is to duck other sounds to get the, for instance, kick drum in front of the mix, so you can hear the kick drum, so it's coming through, you know. Alright, so let's just create a very, very random sound here. Alright, so now we're going to sidechain this. So first, I want to assign this to an individual mixer channel. So let's select that and just channel routing, route selected track. So now we have our 3x oscillator plugin here in this mixer channel. So we can now go and put a plugin here in this mixer channel. But what I'm gonna do here, and this is also why it's very important to create buses in your project. This is because you can create sidechain for each and every element, of course, but that is going to be you're going to be tired of it, because if you want to sidechain, let's say, almost everything in your track besides, let's say, the drums, for instance, then you have to actually create sidechain for each and every instrument and each and every audio sample, for instance, as well. So this is why it's very, very important to group things together in FL Studio or in every project. So if we route this, let's say we route this channel track, this 3x oscillators, to our synths bus here. So let's do that. Let's select this and now just create this and delete it from master. So now it's routed to our synths channel. Or actually, this is a bass sound, so let's create it for the bass sound instead. So let's delete that and just route it to our bass mixer channel instead. So now we have our bass channel here, and in this bass channel, let's now create a plugin. We now want to open up the gross beat here. As you can see, this is a very nice plugin in FL Studio, and what this plugin does is basically to cut the sound in time. So there is a nice preset here called sidechain, which is there, and now we can see the volume is going to just duck whenever the kick drum is playing. So the kick drum is playing here, so you can see that the signal is going to get to 0, and then it's going to go up until the maximum. Then the kick drum is hitting again, it's going to go to the lowest setting, and so on and so forth. So that is how sidechain works. And the very nice thing with this plugin here is that you can actually just right click here and you can choose how much of the sidechain you want by this going with the curve here. You can do it that way, and you can also choose how much of the sidechain signal you want. So let's say that you only want half of the signal to be sidechained and other half of the signal to be just left out, you know. Then you can do it very easily with this knob here. So let's just try it out here. Let's just play it and you will see how the signal is being affected of this plugin now. And now it's so much sidechain, it's so much volume cut off here that you can't barely hear the signal. So let's just right click here. So let's create some more sidechain, or more of the signal coming through. And now we have some different EQ here, for instance, that is cutting off our signal. So because we did that in our template, so let's just get some signal back again. So now we can hear the bass more. Now you can really hear it. So we're going to lower the volume a bit. Go back to our bass channel and now gross beat. You can really hear that pumping sound now. You can also set different points here, so let's say that you want to create a new point like that. Now you can make the sidechain really, really weird here, so you can take off one of the signal here, one of the beats here, and then just having the sidechain as regular in the 3 other beats here. But in most cases, you just want the sidechain to be like this, basically. And this is how the sidechain works. You can also do it just like this, having more smooth sidechain. And this is what I always go with. Or this is maybe too much, so you can just lower the knob here. So that is how sidechain works in FL Studio. Let's see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, welcome back to the course. In this lecture, I'm going to talk about MIDI keyboards and how you use MIDI keyboards inside of FL Studio. So first, let's go to the options and MIDI settings. So as soon as you have your MIDI keyboard connected to your computer, it should list in this input list here. And as you can see, here is my MIDI keyboard. It's called iRig Keys 37. It's a very nice portable MIDI keyboard that I use when I'm on the go. And if you just have your MIDI keyboard listed here, that means that FL Studio has found it and you can use it if it's enabled like this. So it should be green here, and if it is green, you can use it. And some of the MIDI keyboards are supported by FL Studio. And you can use, let's say you have a Korg Nano Key MIDI keyboard here. If you choose this, all of the different presets that come, so let's say that the knobs and all of the different things that are physically on the MIDI keyboard will be supported inside of FL Studio. If your MIDI keyboard isn't listed here, you can use the generic controller, which will make it work, but you will have to set up all of the different knobs, every single physical input on your MIDI keyboard. You will have to set it up manually. And it's very easy to do that. I will show you this as well in this video. So as soon as you have this input here and it's enabled, you can use it inside FL Studio. If you want to have output signal from your MIDI keyboard, and if that MIDI keyboard is supporting that, you can just choose it here in the list and choose Send Master Sync. But that is not what I'm going to use with my MIDI keyboard, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Sometimes if you connect your MIDI keyboard and you don't see it in the list, just hit the refresh device list and it should list here. Sometimes you have different MIDI controllers connected to your computer. Let's say you have a drum pad that you want the drums to be, that you can just play around with the drums, and then you have a MIDI keyboard that is more kind of like a piano and different synth sounds to be played with that MIDI keyboard. You can use multiple MIDI keyboards within FL Studio. It's very easy to do that as well. You just select the MIDI keyboard, just press enable, then go to the next one, press enable, and that will work as well. You can also separate these MIDI keyboards. So let's say that you only want to play, let's say, one plugin or one instrument with a drum pad MIDI controller, and then you want, let's say, only piano sounds to be played with your MIDI keyboard. You can do that as well. So if we just go out of this settings here, and let's say that you want to have this 3x oscillator plugin just being played by your MIDI keyboard. You can do that by just right click here and go to receive notes from, and here you will see all of the different MIDI keyboards or MIDI controllers. So now you can just choose the MIDI controller here, and you can set if you want all of the MIDI channels. So let's say you want all of the different things you can do on your MIDI controller and be set to just this plugin here. You do it by going to receive notes from and just choosing all here. Alright, so let's take a look at the manual assigning of different knobs and different physical inputs on your MIDI controller. You can do that. You can choose what you want to operate with a physical, let's say a knob or a physical input on your MIDI controller. So if I open up this plugin here, I do this very random here. Let's say that I want to have this knob here controlled by a knob on my MIDI controller. I can do that by just right click here, go to link to controller, and now just move whatever physic input you have on your MIDI controller that you want to have this link to. Just move it, and now you can see it's moving that knob here. And I do it physically with my MIDI controller now. Let's say I want this knob here to be controlled by another MIDI knob that I have here on my MIDI controller. Just go to link to controller again. Just set up like that. Now you can see I have my two physical knobs here. So it's very easy to use as well. And sometimes you can't really right click and see this menu here. Let's say if you're on a third-party plugin. So let's actually load up a third-party plugin here. Let's go here. I'm going to use my Serum plugin, which is a very nice plugin. And let's say that I want this to be controlled here. I don't really see that. I can do MIDI learn, of course, but I can't really see this parameter here. So what you can do here is to just touch the parameter that you want to be controlled by some input on your MIDI controller, And then you go to Tools and Last Tweaked. So now you can see the parameter here, Serum B Uniblend, which was our knob there. And now we can go to Link to Controller and just link it. Let's say that you want to get rid of one of the different links to the MIDI controller. You can do that by go to the browser here, go to Current Project and Remote Control, and now you can see all of the different links here. So you can just click on one of them and just press Reset, and that should go away. Alright guys, so that was it for this lecture. Let's see you in the next one. Welcome back to the course, guys. In this lecture, we're going to discuss automation in FL Studio. So automation is basically FL Studio moving different parameters for you automatically in time. So let's say that I have a parameter here in the mixer. Let's say that I have the volume meter here, and I want it to go up and down. Let's say I want it to go up when the snares and hats here are introduced, and then I want it to go down slowly and slowly throughout the track. I can do that with automation, so I don't need to actually manually go and like putting it up and down like this. So automation is very useful. You can do it with every single parameter in FL Studio, and I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. So I have a new arrangement here with a very basic, simple kind of track here that I created. So if you want to create an automation of a single parameter wherever you are in FL Studio, you just basically go to the parameter, of course, and so let's say we wanted the FL keys here. I want this knob to be automated. It's very easy to do so. You just right click on it and go to create automation clip. So when that is done, you will get an automation clip here, as it looks exactly like all of the other clips, and you can see the difference between them. If you go to this list, so you have the automation clips here, and you have the MIDI clips here and audio clips here. So let's go to a third-party plugin here. I'm going to go to the Serum plugin. Let's go to channel rack here, and here I have the Serum plugin. So here you can see just a basic preset that I found inside of Serum, and what I want to do here is to automate some presets. So in this particular preset here, I want to automate this rate button here, because this is what the sound of this preset does basically. In this instance, I just want to automate the rate knob here. So if I right click here, I can't find the menu for the automation clip, so I just go to this icon here, and if you right click on it, you can see create automation clip. So first I have to touch it, the knob, and then I go and right click here. You can see Serum LFO1 rate. So let's do that. Let's create an automation clip for this, and now you can see I have a new clip here, and it's showing up here. So I'm going to take it down like this, and I want it to be grouped with the ARP that I have here, the ARP clip, and the ARP clip is basically the synth sound that I have here, the Serum synth sound. So I'm going to move it up like this, and I'm going to group it. So I'm going to insert a new track here in the playlist. So if I go to synth and just insert one, you can now see I have one new track here, and I want to move this down as well, so move down. And now I can just move this automation clip here, and I can group them together. So if I go to group with above track, you can now see the automation is now grouped with the synth that I'm using the automation for. And this is just because I want to be organized. I can now see the automation here, and I can just expand them if I don't want to see the automation. So just to get organized like this, otherwise you will have automation clips laying around everywhere, and you don't know what the automation clips are for. So that can get very messy. So just make sure to group the automation clips to the respective sound that you're using the automation for. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate the automation here, and let's just play the track first. You will see why it's so important to create the automation inside of this particular synth sound. You can see it sounds exactly the same all of the time. So this preset, if I just put up the rate a bit, you will hear it speed up, and you can slow it down, speed up, and slow it down, so you can create like a kind of a rhythm for this preset. So let's just try that out manually. So let's play it so you can hear what I mean by that. So I want something like that. So I can either record this with my MIDI keyboard and link it to that, press record, and then you can create the automation by recording it with your MIDI keyboard. So let's try that out. I'm going to first link this to a controller. So I can first just use this rate knob just so FL Studio know what I want to control. Then I can go to tools here, last tweaked, and link to controller, and now I want to link this knob here with the rate. Actually, I want it to be on another knob because this knob is very sensitive and I want to move it very, very slowly. So link to controller again and just override it with this knob. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so now I can just record it and you will see what happens. So if I press record, you can see here what I want to record, and I actually want to record notes and automation. So let's press that and press play. There it is. So now let's take a listen to it and you will see the automation. You can also see it here in the background. So let's create a manual automation instead. You can do it with the automation clip that we created before, but I'm going to create it for this cutoff instead, just so you can see a different way you can do it. So let's get rid of the automation clip that we created first, and I want to automate this cutoff knob here. So let's just move it, just right click here, and you will see filter cutoff and create automation clip here. Let's move it over to here, and now I want to create like a curve here, so you can see it. I want the sound to gradually go up like this with the cutoff. Okay, that was a bit too quick, so let's create a new point here by just left clicking, and you can create a curve like that. Let's try it out now. Okay, so I want to make it go full speed there. Let's get rid of that point. All right. Okay, so that is automation in FL Studio. Let's see you in the next lecture. Okay guys, so in this video I'm going to show you shortcuts that you need to know when creating music with FL Studio. So first I want to address the different F keys that you need to learn. So first I want to show you the different F keys that you need to learn. The F keys are the keys above your keyboard or on the upper side of your keyboard. You can see F1, F2, F3, etc. If you're using a Mac, you most certainly can't see them, but you can still use them. On a Mac, you have a key called Fn, which should be on the lower left corner side. You should see the Fn key, and if you press and hold it and then press the different upper keys, you will see it will get the F1, F2, F3 keys as usual. You can also see the F key, which one it is, and they are numbered just underneath the icon on that key. And this is just for Mac. If you're on a Windows, you most certainly have the F key, the function keys as they're called. So if you're getting the F1 key, if we're pressing the F1 key here, you will get the help section here. So as you can see, if we're now focused on our mixer, this will bring up the mixer functions help. So let's say that I'm in FL Studio here, let's say I'm in the playlist and I want some help inside of the playlist. Just go to F1 here, and now it will load up the help for the playlist. So this is actually very useful to use. It's not like regular help window that you have to like search whatever and you can't find that and so on and so forth. So let's say that you have a problem with something. If I go to the browser here, if I'm focused on the browser, let's say I'm here. Now if I press F1, that will load up the help for the browser. You see, it's very useful to have there. Alright, so the next one is going from F5 up to F12. So F5 will actually close and open the playlist. F6 will close and open the channel rack. Then we have F7 piano roll. Then we have F8, which is to see all of the plugins that you have available. So you can actually load up a new plugin here and see it graphically like this. Then we have F9 for the mixer. And then we have settings for F10. F12 will close all of the windows here. So let's say that you have a lot of different windows open up and you just want to get clean, then you go to F12. Then we have all of the different other key commands that are very useful to use, and they can differ between the different versions of FL Studio, and also if you have customized it in some way. So the best thing to do here and to learn is to actually take a look at the panel here, the info panel. You will see the different key commands that you should use to make a different thing here. You can see if you go to the playlist here, you can see now if I hover above the draw tool here, you can see it's the key command tool for that is P. B for the paint, delete D, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to learn this stuff, because let's say that you want to cut something here in the playlist and then you want to draw it out or something like that. It's like time consuming to just cut it like this, then go up here. You want to draw that out like that, for instance, and then you want to cut something else. So instead of going up to the menu here all of the time, you can just go with the key commands. And you have to make sure to take this off, the typing keyboard to piano keyboard, because otherwise the piano will play when you're typing your actual computer keyboard. So if you have this disabled and then go to the slice, which is C, slice like that, then you have P, so you don't have to go up. It's just for me to show you that the key command is P. So now if I go to P here, I have the draw tool here. So it's very easy to use like that for all of the different stuff inside of FL Studio. So if I open up the piano roll like this, now you see all of the different stuff here in the piano roll, and they have their own key commands, as you can see here if I hover them over in the info panel. And yeah, the most important thing to learn here is the key command for the different tools, because that is going to speed up your workflow a lot. It's a lot easier to create and edit different stuff in the piano roll or in the playlist, for instance, if you're doing it with the key commands here on your computer keyboard. One thing that is very nice to use is to hold the control key if you're on Windows, or command key on if you're on a Mac. And when you have the draw tool on, you can just, if you hold it, you can select different clips here, like that. So let's say that I'm selecting here, and if I want to deselect, just hold it and click wherever on the empty space here. Useful for copying and pasting different stuff in the playlist. And same thing goes with the piano roll. So let's say that I want to copy this section here, because it's exactly the same here as I want it to be here. So what I do here is to hold the control key or command key, just select it like this, and now I can just go with Control B, and now it will create us exactly the same clips here in this side. You can also select them like that and go with Control or Command C and Control or Command V to paste it. And now I can drag it out like this. Next thing that I want to show you, which is really useful to have, is to zoom. And you Control or Command zoom like this, or with Alt like this. So you scroll and hold Alt or Control to zoom. It's very useful to have like that. Thing that I want to show you in the playlist is how you create track and group tracks very quickly. So if you want to create a new track, just go to whatever track you want here, just right click on it and press I to create a track above it. So let's create 2 tracks. And now if I want to group these 2 tracks, I just go to the second track that I want to group with and just right click and press G, and that will group them together. So what that does is to group with above track. So you have to make sure that if you want to group something, you want it to be with the track that is above it. So let's say that I create a lot of different tracks here, like that. Now I can group them all together. So first I, and then G to group them. Then I can collapse that like that. You can also right click within this group here and just press I, and that will create tracks within this group. You can see it if I go here. So all of these tracks will be inside of the group if you press I within the group. So now all of these tracks are within this track here. So if I collapse it and just go on another track, let's say this track here, and press I, that will create a new track which isn't in the group. This is a very useful one. If we have a track that we want to assign to the mixer and we want it to be colored and everything as it is in the channel rack, so first let's just rename it and color it to something else like this. And now we want this keys here to be assigned to the mixer. We want it to be renamed as it is here, and we want it also to be colored as well. So what you will do here is to just select it here, the keys here, and you want it to be on whatever insert channel here. So let's say we want it to be there, and now we press Ctrl or Command L, and that will, you see that is now assigned to the 14, and it's colored and renamed as it was here in the channel rack. Say now that we want this track to be moved to this side in the mixer. It's very easy to do that as well. Just hold shift and now you scroll. You see that will move this channel here in the mixer. So you can organize your different mixer tracks by doing it like this. This one is if you want to create a new pattern inside of the channel rack, then you go to F4 and that will create a new pattern. You just name it. So new pattern like this. You can color it as well and just press like that, and now you will have your new pattern. So that is very nice to use, and it will automatically put up the rename and color box, so you can immediately start to work on the new pattern. Alright, so now let's say that we have a new pattern here, and I have a kick drum that is, the beat is like this, and now I want to move these rhythms here just to see how it sounds with the different rhythms. So let's say that I have something like this, and now if I want to move the kick drum here, let's just play this pattern here so you can hear what I do. Alright, so now I want to move this pattern a bit, so let's select it, press and hold Shift, Command and your arrows, or Shift Control arrows, and now you can see you're moving it like this. So it's very easy to shift it like that instead of just deleting it and writing out like that, and then if we don't like it we write it out like that. It's a lot easier to just shift, command or control, and then do it like this. Alright guys, that's it for this video, and we'll see you in the next lecture.